Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome. Thanks for joining us despite the rainy season and difficulties on the road, I'm sure. So maybe if we can all please find our seats so we can start. All right. So today we're convening to commemorate or celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. Also taking this as an opportunity, to reflect on how this is a time for repositioning the AU for the changing peace and security situation in the global context as well. So this is really supposed to offer as an opportunity for taking stock of the various activities, achievements, major milestones that the PSC has achieved in the course of 20 years, but also to exchange quite candidly on the kind of challenge that confronts the PSC currently as well. Um, so today we have the honor of being joined by His Excellency SRSG Parfait, who is also the head of UNOAU. We have amongst us Her Excellency Ambassador Emilia Makusa, permanent representative of Namibia to the AU. His Excellency Ambassador Salvatore Matata, Head of Commercial Liaison Office to the AU. And of course, Mr. Lamin Fati, who is the VP of the Gambia Permanent Mission to the AU and collaborating with us on organizing this event today. Ms. Nima Trusi, who's the Head of Secretariat of the AU PSC, also organizing this event with us, could not join us today, unfortunately. But yeah, having introduced the panel, perhaps let me call Mr. Lamin Fati to the opening remarks. And of course, our own founding director, Dr. Salamon Darso, will be moderating the first round of sessions, and I'll be joining afterwards as he has to leave us for another event. Thanks. Just also to say, members of the panel, you can please join us on the stage.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Ambassador Jaina Bajany, standing chair of the PSC for the month of April, allow me to express our sincere gratitude to Amani Africa for its foresight in calling for the joint convening of this policy forum on the 20th anniversary of the launching of the African Union Peace and Security Council. The forum is intended to invite participants to reflect on the PSC's achievements as well as challenges, its successes and lessons learned during its 20-year existence. In light of the challenging security landscape of our continent, the forum is also meant to garner reflections on the repositioning of the AU for better management of new and emerging conflicts, as well as protracted conflicts on the continent. I have no doubt that with such distinguished panelists, we will be treated to deeper reflections and expert analysis regarding new and innovative approaches to attaining Pax Africana. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the launching of the PSC 20 years ago marked a point of departure in Africa's quest for being in the driver's seat when it comes to the management and resolution of conflicts and disputes within the continent. The mere launching of the PSC was a bold act of confidence by taking charge of our destiny in terms of our collective willingness to consolidate peace, security, and stability on our soil. This is Africa committing to finding African solutions to African problems. Excellencies, as we celebrate and reflect, allow me to highlight a few observations. Over the years, the PSC became one of the leading voices of Africa in conflict prevention and management. Africa's voice now matters in decision-making processes on cyber peace and security issues affecting the continent. Through the PSC, meaningful partnerships have been forged with the United Nations, United Nations Security Council, the European Union, and other bilateral and multilateral partners to support peace operations, political dialogue, mediation, and political missions. Annual and regular consultations are increasingly taking place between the Council and its multiple partners. The Peace Fund was also established, and with the operationalization of its new crisis reserve facility, it is now poised to support and enhance the role of the AU in peacekeeping, peace building, and peacemaking. This is a major achievement towards addressing the perennial funding gaps and challenges that affect the execution of mandates. Excellencies, over the last 20 years, the PSC was able to kickstart peace support operations in several conflict situations on the continent, which resulted in rehearting of some missions by the United Nations. We have examples like the UNAMID in Sudan, MINUSMA in Mali, and MINUSMA in Central African Republic. All these came at enormous cost and sacrifice. Excellencies, distinguished participants, in 2014, we saw one of the best examples of innovation, leadership, partnership, solidarity, and sacrifice, which came in the form of launching the African Union support to Ebola in West Africa, CIOA, by the PSC. AU member states, partners, African business leaders, and volunteers came together to fight the Ebola outbreak in West Africa. The mission was a success and partly inspired the urgent launching of the Africa CDC. Despite all these positive achievements, challenges remain. Silencing the guns on the continent, a very lofty goal, remains an urgent priority. Too many conflicts continue to rage on the continent. Consolidating good governance in the face of the resurgence of unconstitutional changes of governments will be a continuing challenge. We must not relent in our efforts to strengthen the AUPSC and other platforms as we collectively strive for a peaceful, united, and prosperous Africa. The Africa that we bequeath to the next generation must be strong, resilient, capable of meeting the aspirations of our people, especially the youth. Excellencies, distinguished participants, the principles of subsidiarity and complementarity have taken shape over the past 2 decades, with the Rex Items playing important roles when it comes to conflict resolution and management, as well as preventive diplomacy. We must admit, however, there is still room for improvement regarding the frequency and regularity of consultations, coordination, and joint actions. The role of AU agencies, institutions, civil society, and think tanks are also critical towards providing analytical support for the critical work of the PAPS department and the PSC. Evidence-based approaches are critical to inform decision-making. The perennial challenge, monitoring the implementation of our decisions and their efficacy, as well as the enforcement of sanctions, need a fresh examination. Practice of field visits to conflict zones is a best practice that needs to be strengthened. Excellencies, before concluding, allow me to highlight the critical challenge of overcoming the hurdles of UN Security Council authorization, African peace support operations, despite all the partnership and the adoption of various UN resolutions, including Resolution 2019, support operations will never go away. In a final note, a tribute to our fallen men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice and security of our continent. On the occasion of this 20th anniversary policy forum on the establishment of the PSC, we solemnly honor their memory. We look forward to rich and fruitful reflections. I thank you all.
A very good afternoon to you all, Excellencies, Excellency SRSG Parfait, Your Excellency Ambassador Emilia, Your Excellency Ambassador Matata, and my dear brother Lamin. Thank you so much for, as usual, honoring us with your kind presence today for this important engagement on the reflections on the 20th anniversary of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union. I am most grateful, particularly to Ambassador Emilia, who had to make it here despite the fact that she's not feeling that well. So I'm not going to ask too much of her this afternoon, but her presence on and off itself is a mark of her dedication for her work, but also her unfailing support, personally for me and for us at Amani Africa. So thank you very much, Ambassador. Wish you speedy recovery as well. So I think what I would do, I think, Lamin started us. Let me thank the Embassy of the Gambia, the chairperson of the Peace and Security Council for the month of April, who collaborated with us in this initiative. Again, thank you very much to you and to Ambassador Janaba for always engaging in our platform, also collaborating with us. And of course, to each and every one of you who accepted our invitation and joined us for this afternoon's reflections. Lamin started us by, mentioning certain important words that I'm sure in the course of today, we will be reflecting on. One of that is Pax Africana, a peace that is, promoted and secured by Africa and for Africa. That is a concept that was first articulated by none other than the foremost African scholar, the giant political scientist, the Kenyan, who wrote a book on Pax Africana, Ali Mazrui. And this was actually in the early 1960s. That book was written. So at the dawn of independence. And of course, I think it's important to also remember that the Ghanaian president, the first Ghanaian president, independence president, President Nkrumah, actually articulated in his campaign for the immediate unification of the continent, a collective security arrangement for Africa to have, including in the course of his engagement here in Addis. Now it's going to be how many years? It's going to be 61 years, right? Yes, 61 years next month, the establishment of the Organization of African Unity. So there is something that actually the Peace and Security Council, for the very first time, comes closer to really giving expression to this long-standing ambition of Africa trying and seeking to have a peace and security mechanism that enables it to assume responsibility for its peace and security challenge. And therefore, the establishment of the Peace and Security Council itself, and of course, I think its operationalization is a very, important thing. Being on the driver's seat is the other point that Lamin mentioned earlier on. The other thing that he mentioned is African solutions to African problems. Of course, there are a lot of problematic issues with this framing. First, it says that the problems are just purely African. We know from history and from current global international relations that not everything that we see is purely and exclusively endogenous. All right, there are endogenous elements, but there are also exogenous factors that actually facilitate and contribute as drivers. If you consider, for example, let's say small arms and light weapons, right? For example. And of course, the other thing is that being on the driver's seat doesn't mean that there are no, people sitting in the car, right? When we talk about African solutions to African problems, that is the other thing that we have to remember. That the car is basically something in respect of which others do have interest, and the contribution and role of others is so important as well. So there is some kind of problematization that we may need to do. Now, having said that and building on what Lamin said, let me now go back to Ambassador Emilia, who has been in the Peace and Security Council, providing important leadership in various files, both country-specific files, but also thematic files, for her to share with us her reflections of the journey of the PSC, as a member of the PSC so far, and what we should expect and how the PSC can do better moving forward as well. Ms. Emilia, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. And firstly, let me commend Dr. Desho and his team for organizing this seminar or workshop to reflect on the 20th anniversary of the Peace and Security Council. I would have preferred to be sitting somewhere there and listening instead of me talking about what the Peace and Security Council have done as well as have achieved over the 20 years. But firstly, there are a number of lessons learned and best practices that I would like to reflect on in addition to those that were referred to in the concept note that was circulated. After 20 years, I think we still... Welcome, Ambassador Gatt. After 20 years, I think the Peace and Security Council have done quite well, but there are still a lot that needs to be done. In particular, with regard to the threats on the continent, how we deal with them, and so forth. So, as we all know, there are still a lot of conflicts currently brewing on the continent. I think more than what was actually there before. And so the most important lesson that we have learned in peace and security is to speak with one voice. And I think we have even achieved that by coordinating with the A3, the UN Security Council, which is very important that African issues are also taken up at the Peace and Security Council. And we promote what we as African Peace and Security Council promote in Africa, also at the UN Security Council. So I think that is one lesson that I believe we have implemented very well and continue to work well. And as an example, just recently, I think it's Resolution 2719 on predictable financing for peace support operations led by AU and approved by the UN. I think that is a clear example of how we can collaborate or coordinate better now and in the future. There is also the issue of conflict prevention and resolutions that we have done well by appointing, I think, we have the panel of the wise, we have various mediation yeah, we have put a lot of mediation efforts in that, with the appointment of the panel of the wise, with the appointment of the high-level panels, in particular the one on Sudan, immediate one. I'm referring to the immediate one. I think we have realized that we could, as Africa, coordinate some of these issues ourselves. We all know that there are many other interested parties in the issues in Sudan, but with the appointment of the high-level panel, as a Peace and Security Council, we took a decision that they need to start coordinating that to find the term you just talk about, African solutions to African problems. So hopefully hopefully with the high level panel, we should be in a position to bring together all stakeholders in the conflict in Sudan, as well as also the appointment of high level panels to deal with the countries that are under suspension. There has been appointments, there has been consultations with those countries actually, so that they can return to constitutional order. So we hope that with all those consultations, although some of them you are not aware of them, but they are taking place. The Peace and Security Council is actually at pains with the 6 countries that have been suspended. So we have also learned how to deal with that, and hopefully we will improve on that. And that's why I said I would have wanted to sit in the audience than talking about it. And then one other element is also the appointment or the deployment of AU liaison officers to countries that are at risk in emerging from conflict, as well as special political missions that the Peace and Security Council is undertaking. We all know that the Peace and Security Council have also agreed to peace mission to Sudan. But also other countries that are in conflict, in those countries that have been suspended, some missions have already taken place, and informal consultations are taking place with those countries. So I think that is a good lesson to not suspend and not consult or engage them. As much they are family of the African Union, and we would want to have them back sooner than later. As well, there is also the Africa Standby Force. Although it is not fully operational, we know within the SADC region, they have already operationalized Africa Standby Force, which is also what they have used in Mozambique in deployment to SADC Summit DRC in the DRC, as well as the East African community. They have also used the Africa Standby Force, as well as Nigeria under the MNJTF. So basically, those are the lessons that we have learned, that continuous consultation, continuous engagement is very, very important. We have also, under the thematic issues, come up with the constant engagement for women, peace and security. We all know that the Peace and Security Council have appointed African ambassadors, African youth ambassadors for peace, as well as the African platform on children affected by armed conflict. Our very own ambassador from the Gambia is the co-chair of the platform of children affected by armed conflict, and I too serve on the steering committee, and we would want to see the plight of children that are affected by armed conflict addressed in all meetings and in discussions that are taking place, as well as the increase of women participation in peace, women participation in peace, peace mediation issues. We have engaged a lot of women, women from Sudan. We are also engaging women in all countries that are in conflict. And I think one of the major development is the fact that now in March, while Namibia was the chair, we had a high-level ministerial seminar on women, peace and security, and we have agreed that we will continue, the Peace and Security Council will continue to engage women at local, national and regional levels to be part of the peace making processes. So, what are the critical challenges and gaps that are currently confronting the Peace and Security Council? I think the biggest challenge is the issue of unconstitutional change of governments that have reoccurred in that one is as a result of many factors, poverty, governance. I think there are many if you look at it, but this is a challenge that we currently are looking at, and we hope to hear from you also. How can we address some of these challenges in terms of unconstitutional change of government? And we know that the major one is governance issues in some of the countries. Our countries, including my own country, we are all in denial when we hear as to there are this brewing in your country. We tend to not agree or want to take that seriously. The early warning signs that are being given out there, and we tend to ignore those early warning signs. So as a result of that denial, peace is broken at many a times. There is also one of the other challenge, which is the limited financial resources that the AU is having in funding for its own peace support activities. Because of that, you have a lot of outside interference because you rely on outsiders, partners, and others to fund the peace support operations, and then also one other big challenge I would want to say is the issue of member states that are in conflict, that are having crises in their countries in refusing or agreeing the item to be put on the agenda of the Peace and Security Council. So that is also a big challenge for the Peace and Security Council. And also the issue of limited early warning systems. Although we have our research institute based in Algeria, we have our CISA and so forth. There are still some limitations somewhere in identifying some of the conflicts that are happening on the continent. So I would say those are the major challenges that we are facing. And I think the last one is actually coordination and cooperation between the REX and the AU Peace and Security Council. Although there is a MOU between Peace and Security Council as well as the REX, there are certain issues that we still need to work on so that we can see how we can properly collaborate and work together smoothly. And also just to know what is it that the REX have to do and what is it that Peace and Security Council have to do. So I would want to stop there for now. And I will be willing to take some questions, if any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Emilia, for highlighting very important areas of achievements from the side of the Peace and Security Council, particularly in terms of the level of partnership that the PSC has established with international bodies, particularly with the United Nations, including the UN Security Council, and from where it was in the early 2000s and to where it is today, quite a very long way that we have come in terms of building a more and expanded, deepening partnership. And some of the examples that you gave, like 2719, actually exemplifying how far we have come since that time. I'm sure as I turn to His Excellency, the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Office to the African Union, we will definitely hear more about the importance of this partnership and the centrality of it, but also, of course, the expectations for its potential expansion. There are many discussions currently happening, including under the leadership of the Secretary General with respect to the Summit of the Future, which presents even further opportunities for a more expanded and deepening partnership. And you also highlighted, of course, the various tools that the African Union Peace and Security Council has operationalized over the years. The mediation and peacemaking instruments that it has put in place, the spatial political missions, the its own tools like the field missions that the African Union Peace and Security Council uses. And of course, I think the challenge that we have highlighted around UCG and how you are trying to navigate the difficulties of the need for engagement, while at the same time, of course, making sure that you uphold the norms of the African Union. Those important issues, and of course, the thematic issues, including the recent decision of the high-level seminar in Swakopmund with the establishment of a high-level process, a new high-level process, providing another important platform and leadership on women, peace, and security, on building on what the PSC has been doing, including through the establishment of the Office of the Special Envoy for Peace and Security. And the challenge, denial of early warning signs by member states, resistance of countries in conflict, for them to be discussed in the Peace and Security Council, and the coordination and cooperation issues between the PSC and REX, in respect of which, of course, we also have Ambassador Matata joining us to reflect on that as well. But first, let me give the floor to His Excellency, the SRSG, my dear brother Parfait. As always, thank you very much for coming and for sharing with us your rich reflections and insights. You have the floor, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear brother Solomon. The good news with, I have this afternoon speaking after my dear sister, Emilia, and my brother, Amin, is that it's the comfort of someone who comes courageously to speak about the topic that he does not anything about. So they have provided me the food for thoughts, and I've taken a lot of notes. And it will be a pleasure to go through the issues that you have so well outlined. But first and foremost, really happy anniversary, happy 20th anniversary. It's commendable that we are indeed gathering this afternoon and to celebrate the momentous achievement from the continent that you have, the two of you, so well articulated. Achievements is definitely a word that is well placed to contemplate the work that the council has done over the past 20 years. And of course, whenever there is good work, there are daunting challenges. And I thank you for so candidly reflecting on those challenges. And my other complaint is that I was really hoping to rely deeply on my dear sister Nima, because they say always, here is someone who will be providing the institutional, background and memory on the terrific job that the council has done. But you've done so well, and then we are really in a place of comfort. Then I have, before going through the 4 or 5 points that I want to discuss, I've already done the congratulations to the member states of the African Union and to the PSC for their achievements. Let me also commend Amani Africa. Really, my dear brother, also, Solomon, your institution is part, is the 7th, 9th, we counted, body of the AUPSC/AGA, architecture of the union. You hold a dear place really in the whole setup, and we owe you a great deal of appreciation for your consistency, for enabling us to follow very closely through your absolutely insightful reports. I believe this is something that is accompanying very well the work of member states. So we need really to pay tribute to the terrific job that you are doing. Now, there is no question about the fact that the council is today respected body in the global architecture for peace and security in our world. This is it. I have myself, with colleagues, the privilege of, through our office, the United Nations office to the African Union, the privilege of coordinating briefings by the entire UN system to the Peace and Security Council on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. And the beauty with the council, having learned from the Security Council, is that here don't have much stories of encroachment. Your issues are, your approach is comprehensive. Therefore, you're really looking into peace and security issues, not only through the narrow lenses of security, but rather in the broad understanding of what it is today. And as my boss always reminds me, security, is only one dimension of prevention. It's whole really understanding and tackling whole spectrum of issues that are affecting the world through a nexus approach, and to see the interconnectedness between peace, security, development, humanitarian issues, and what climate, what we find in the Security Council. And it's really a joy to be able to contribute modestly the work that your very able body is doing. And if you have anything just to compare, and people may tell you, how come 20 years we still have conflict? Then you just turn around and then you say, well, UN Security Council, 75 years plus, we have a peaceful world. No, don't take that one. It's work in progress. We are living, as we're having this discussion, as someone just reminded us, in the context of the upcoming AGN intergovernmental negotiations in preparation for another major summit of the future in September, because we have to take stock. We are living in a world that is not giving any one of us the assurance that tomorrow will be a better place. We tend to be now regretting what we have done over the 75 years. An architecture that definitely needs to be reformed, and absolutely we have to reform it. But, well, in the current polarized world that we're living in, we're just wondering what else needs to be done in a context where global trust has been broken, and partly also due to broken commitment. Then you really have to think twice before you can throw the stone onto the African Union or complain about maybe the glass are full. I always like to say that the glass is filling. You will be filling fastly as we would all like. It is definitely. Now, my comments will be really around the idea of the putting. We're all still digesting our our lunches and the very yummy welcome that Amani gave onto all of us. I just want to go into 5 quick points that I jotted down here. Now, my first would be to say, implement well what you have. And I must say that when you look at the peace and security architecture, it's absolutely, remarkable. You can see a very unprecedented set of normative framework that the union has put together. The AUPSC itself is really taking the issues in a very systemic way, going from prevention, early warning, early intervention to peace support operations. If of course it was not possible to prevent the occurrence of war, and therefore and then when we link it with the AGA, that's recognizing that peace is not only a military or a peace and security, a security issue, but it has also aspect that pertains to good governance, good political and economic governance, charter on elections and democracy. And you have of normative framework that are absolutely remarkable. So that's why, just echo what Chairperson Faki himself said just last year in October in Cairo. Mohammed, I think you were in the room and some of the colleagues were in the room when he said, look, we cannot keep reinventing the wheel. We have simply to implement as much as we can what we have. Now, you heard Emilia talking about those issues that are so difficult to do, particularly, and that's my second point, how we should invest more in prevention, early action. We have to narrow further, the space between early action, how to make through the many mechanisms that are in place in conflict prevention, through analysis, early warning. How can we make sure that the council is made aware of all this development and can very quickly, of course, deploy tools, one of them, the panel of the wise, into the field to address the looming issues. Now, another issue that I need to, and that will be my third point really, of course, we will have to align more closely AUPSC and AGA, and the way of doing it is really having this holistic approach that I think is very, very well articulated within the African Union. But one major concern is that the door is being closed to early action. And that's not to complain, but that's a concern that the chairperson also has so well articulated. We are now realizing that the tool that we have, our toolkits, is no longer fit for purpose. Member states will very quickly hide behind the cloak of sovereignty. I think Emilia mentioned that, and that's a major concern. Now, there would be a need for us really to articulate, to reflect a bit deeper on the whole issue of sovereignty. I think sovereignty should come with responsibility. And it will be extremely difficult to overcome concerns over sovereignty if we, and when I say we, if the continent doesn't go back to, and that's my fourth point, to the integration project. Meaning, I really believe that integration is Africa's strongest currency because very few regions are, at least at the normative level, at a political level, I would even say at the cultural and emotional level, so at this historical level, so intertwined as the African continent. Yet, the integration project today been somehow neglected a bit. I dare saying this, but we cannot be looking at peace and security. Look what is happening just next door. Who would say that the Sudan, crisis is a Sudanese issue? Who would ever say this? Look at the neighbors. How much they are affected? We discussed this yesterday. Refugees have left the country, and therefore you cannot, when there is an issue, when there is a call from the Peace and Security Council to send early warning, early deployment missions through the panel of the wise of Pamwest, a country should not be allowed to say, back off. This is an issue. We have nothing to do. We will solve it among ourselves. That's not true. We have been seeing this time and again. So there is really here a moral responsibility. So yes to sovereignty, but you have a moral responsibility to ensure that wrong in your country will not be staying within your borders, and therefore do something. Work, make use of the tools that are available. It would be another problem if the tools were not available, but the tools are available. And it's so frustrating that we have been time and again seeing pushbacks, the government that are on their knees, collapsing. It's only when you have terror, and at some point, there could be again. Look at the Sahel. Look at the Sahel. So we serious issues. I think continent should be able to make a better use of its tools. And this can only be done if there is effort to revamp the integration project. So that to say that you cannot enjoy peace alone. Peace is a collective good, is a common global good that you have to show that as you deal with your problems at home, you will not become an exporter of problems to others. And therefore, in the name, for the sake of regional integration, peace and security, collective peace and security, come together and address this issue. So something needs to be done, because for the time being, really, we have to worry. Shrinking space for interventions. And when I say interventions here, I say for early action and for conflict prevention. So we need to do something, because diplomacy for peace is really on back foot. Therefore, this is not going to work. As the SG has been calling for, as you were mentioning, the future, the SG has been in a new agenda for peace, deliberately recognizing the greater role that regional organization will be having in building peace globally and in a partnership with Africa, with the United Nations. Therefore, really, this is a responsibility that is squarely on the table of the Union. I have no doubt that it will be taken up quite robustly. Now, my fifth point and last, peace, the PSC and the future, UN readiness through 2719. With Ambassador Gad and Leeds Stein and other colleagues in the room this morning, we kind of exchanged views on 2719 as a project that will be concerning all of us moving forward in terms of its implementation. But definitely, we can only commend there too this as an achievement of the Peace and Security Council, of course, with everyone's help, including the United Nations, SG, who have been quite vocal on calling for predictable contributions and flexible for the peace support operations. But that resolutions, when we'll be able to unpack it together, will give a lot of work, of course, to the PSC, but we will also set the partnership between the African Union and the United Nations on a totally new level. Absolutely, personally, and my team and I are really thrilled to be able to see how, by having the right tools together, we can overcome and defeat this worrisome trend of an increase in conflict and decay of the peace and security architecture of our world. So with these few comments, my dear sermon, allow me to beg uh, for pardon, maybe to end with something that I really liked in your report. I like the notion of proactive assessment of vulnerable member states, not in terms of prevention. I mean, that's a job that I'm looking at peace and security member before me, and of course, the chair is still around. We need to be proactive in assessing who among ourselves, among the member states, will need that help, brotherly, sisterly help as early as possible, because there is no business, money. There is no money is lacking. Peace interventions, peace enforcement must be the exception, even as we have now the tool, from which and purposely with non-state actors and address asymmetrical warfare that is imposed upon member states. We cannot use it as our first resort. It has to always be really when we have tried everything else and if we cannot, then we can resort to that tool. But then really by being proactive, diplomacy for peace, I am absolutely certain that the Peace and Security Council will achieve all its objectives.
Thank you very, thank you very much for those five very important points that you have shared with us. I think where you ended is a very important point. The African Union may be recognized in terms of comparative advantage in respect to peace support operations for mobilizing and deploying fast. But if you think about it, the base attributes of the African Union lies in its capacity to build consensus among its member states and mobilize and deploy that consensus towards getting some result in the peace and security field. So it is the muscle of the African Union in diplomacy that is by far the most important instrument and tool for the success of the Peace and Security Council. Historically as well, if you look at the journey of the Peace and Security Council, some of its incredibly, groundbreaking achievements have been and relate to that kind of consensus building among its member states, with the African Union Commission, bringing in the institutional memory as well as its technical competence bear in actually channeling that collective energy towards getting a result on various peace and security issues. I think we can't and we shouldn't emphasize enough that this is what the Peace and Security Council and the African Union membership need to hammer home. However good resources you may have, other logistics and tools, at the end of the day, after those matters, as you rightly say, they should come in. They come at the tail end of when diplomacy has failed, right? When prevention has failed, when other efforts has failed, that we bring in those instruments. So the emphasis should be on these other areas. So, for example, let me just give you one example, and then I hand over to Ambassador Matata. In 2012, I think I'm right, April, Sudan and South Sudan were on the verge of a full-fledged war as a result of an incident relating to a major oil-rich region called Heglig. The AU, through the panel, the high-level panel that Ambassador Emilia mentioned earlier on, led by President Mbeki, working with the Peace and Security Council, adopted a decision by the PSC that not only pulled these two countries back from the brink, but also actually created the conditions for these two countries within that same year to sign the post-cessation agreement. following the secession of South Sudan in 2011. What is remarkable about that particular piece of work, not only it's, diplomacy at its best, it prevented the war, but also it facilitated even the signing of a peace agreement on post-secession outstanding issues that two countries were unable to move forward on. And one, I think, very important aspect of the success of the critical element of that success component is not just the collective consensus and diplomacy of member states of the Peace and Security Council and the AU Commission through the panel, the Mbeki panel, but also the UN Security Council throwing its full weight behind that plan that was put in place by the Peace and Security Council. For the first time in the history of the UN Security Council, the UN Security Council adopted that decision of that communique of the PSC as its own resolution, word by word, verbatim. That was the first time ever. The Security Council is very jealous on its prerogative, as you mentioned earlier on, the Peace and Security Council doesn't say, you guys just, the Security Council is a little bit, sensitive and protective of its turf. It saw wisdom in throwing its weight behind that decision and adopting it as its own decision. Thereby, the weight of the two led to that kind of successful outcome that we have seen in 2012. So that is why this is so important. I would hand over to you. Reflect on, as part of the PSC, Article 16 provides for the important role of regional economic communities and mechanisms. Ambassador Matata has been a long-time observer of the evolution of this relationship from the time when REX representatives were just observers from outside to a time when they were allowed to come in, where we are today. So it has been quite a journey, and indeed one that needs its own celebration as well. As I do that, may I get the opportunity to acknowledge the presence of members of the Peace and Security Council as well. Ambassador of Egypt, Ambassador of Botswana, Ambassador of Cameroon. I see my sister from Angola, Mike from Uganda, Tapiwe from Zimbabwe, South Africa. So thank you very much for your kind presence. And I wish to thank Ambassador Christian for also the support to Amani Africa, which made it possible for us to convene this one. Ambassador Matata, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Solomon. Let me greet first the chair of the Peace and Security Council for the month, and of course, all members of the Peace and Security Council, all excellencies, my brother Parfait. I'm going to follow you. I'm going to deliver 5 messages, and how I'm going to articulate them, that will come after. I have also said something to celebrate. And to begin with, I would really appreciate Amani for having invited me to speak on behalf of REX and the regional mechanism. I have with me colleagues from ECOWAS and the SADC sitting behind there. Others are on mission. We are not very few in our offices, so when you go on mission, you are leaving the room, unoccupied. That's my case. I'm one person in my office. But honestly, from the perspective of the REX, we would like to acknowledge that the AU Peace and Security Council has really shown its relevance. It stood as a key player in the global peace and security architecture through its interaction with the UN Peace and Security Council, European Union, of course, REX, regional mechanism, civil society organization, to deliver on its mandate. We also, from where we are, recognize that the Peace and Security Council has pushed for the establishment of organs, key organs, like the panel of wise, the mediation support unit, the early warning system, the African standby force, to allow Peace and Security Council not only to meet, but to deploy on the field. We do also recognize that the Peace and Security Council has, with authority, enforced critical normative frameworks aimed at preserving peace and security. And this has been done with some degree of consistency, especially as regards to change of government. We also, from the Rex perspective, admire the fact that the AU Peace and Security Council holds regular meetings, and more importantly, publishes monthly schedule of work. This is something which is very much commendable because it allows us, Rex and the regional mechanism, to follow the work of the AU Peace and Security and to respond to the call whenever we are called to intervene. Now, my 5 messages are the following. The first one, I want to show our legitimacy. Why I'm here? Yes, I'm an observer. I'm representing actors in the peace and security architecture. That is number one. I'm going to share with you very important legal frameworks, which really give us the right part of the system. Secondly, I'm going to let you know what we think are the limitation in terms of implementing those legal framework. I may also say some few words about our point of view, what we seem to see as structural challenges of the AU Peace and Security Council. As he said, I've been around something like 15 years, then for 2 years, for 4, then 2, I don't know. I don't even know when I'm leaving. And I will also attempt to tell you what the Peace and Security Council has tried to do as the representative of the chair of the Peace and Security Council to get closer to us. And finally, I will share with you, in my own perspective, honestly, what I could propose to do to make things work better. On the legal framework, the key legal provision is Article 16 of the protocol related to establishment of the AU Peace and Security Council, which states that regional mechanisms for conflict prevention, management, and resolution are part of the overall security architecture of AU, which has the primary responsibility for promoting peace and security and stability in Africa. We know that AU has the primary responsibility. That is not subject to discussion. The second element I would like to mention is the MOU, Peace and Security, between AU and the REX, which was signed in 2008, in actually January. In the 3 provision, number 1, key objectives, contributing to the operationalization of AUPSC, promoting joint program, and also enhance partnership with UN and other organizations. That's a critical one. The second one is about the principles. There are 4 principles, and I will just mention 2. One is the respect for the primary responsibility of the Union. At the same time, I would say the respect for the role and the responsibilities of the REX and the regional mechanism in their area of jurisdiction and where appropriate, and of course, the famous principle of subsidiarity. Now, the same MOU is actually articulating things related to meetings, institutional presence, and the modality of interaction between AU Peace and Security Council and the REX. One of them states that the coordination mechanism, the REX, shall be invited to discussion of anything brought before the council whenever that question is being addressed by a REC or a coordination mechanism or is of special interest to that REC and the coordination mechanism. Now, 2 key questions. When do we consider that a question is being really addressed by a REC? The second question, who determines that a question is of special interest to EREC. I think those two questions are addressed to Peace and Security Council members, humbly. Now, the second provision is about the establishment of liaison office of REX, of AU to the REX, and of course, the establishment of the REX regional mechanism to the AU. That's why we are there, actually. And when Solomon was teasing me that at the beginning, we were not seen as really partners, we were actually outside the premises of the AU, in a building which is in the corner somewhere. So when we came in building B, which was hosting peace and security, we were honestly seen as spies. Especially COMESA, because the flag COMESA, the logo of COMESA is African Union, which is shining everywhere. But everywhere is not really true because we are not in West Africa. At least I know we are in the north. From Egypt can recognize that. Now, the third provision is Article 20. That one is actually saying something very interesting, to say, without prejudice to the primary role of the Union in the promotion of maintenance of peace and security, the REX, and where appropriate, the coordination mechanism shall be encouraged to anticipate and prevent conflict. Now, the same Article 20 is talking of the fact that the REX shall keep the chairperson of AUC and through him the council fully and continuously inform and assure of their activities in conformity of the Peace and Security Council. Now, if you look at these provisions, there are 4 questions which arise that I submit to you. First, there are these words that I found very disturbing. One is where appropriate. I mean, where appropriate. Me, I'm an economist, and I have a background of mathematics. I kind of get lost when you say where appropriate. The second one you heard, shall be encouraged. They are not asked to, they shall be encouraged. And then the third one is whenever the person is of special interest. I mean, this expression to me, they tell about optional nature of action, both by AU and by REX. Now, the second one is very important because the MOU actually is governing relations between AU Commission and the REX Secretariat. The member states are nowhere in the MOU actually. So, number 3 is the famous principle of subsidiarity. I have been looking into all these documents. I'm not a lawyer, of course, I have a weakness in that. I've never seen where that subsidiarity is. But more important, and I come back to it, it's not benchmarked. So you cannot assess whether you have done well or not. And the final observation I want to make, principle of primary responsibility of the union. I think everybody agrees with that. But there is no practical modalities to enforce it at the lower level. I mean, at the REX level. Now, I must say that the Peace and Security Council has really done a lot in trying to resolve this limitation. And unfortunately, the ambassador is not there, ambassador of Namibia. That exercise started in Namibia, in Swakopmund, 2015, where the Peace and Security Council invited all the representatives of the REX, tell them what they think is not going well. And I was privileged with my SADC colleague to draft those statements, and I delivered it. It was extremely well received by the Peace and Security Council. We were then given a chance to go to Nigeria, the Peace and Security Council sent one ambassador from the Gambia, by the way. What a coincidence. And he listened to us again, appreciated our submission. Now, after that, from 2019, I don't remember, I think it was Rwanda, they actually went further. The Peace and Security Council invited us to look the member state chairing REX, those who have peace and security structure or not, to attend their session. And there was another one, and there was a third one. Now, out of those consultations, it was noted something very interesting. And I just mentioned 4 of them. Number one, it was found that REX and the regional mechanism were making too much noise without having actually a Peace and Security Council in some of them. The Peace and Security Council committed to help REX to establish those organs. I don't know how far we have gone, Excellency. Now, the second, it is also our responsibility. The second one, our early warning systems are very well developed. It's a good number of REX. It's not the same in all REX, which is a very important instrument for the Peace and Security Council. The third one is also the African Standby Force and the panel of wise. They are not well developed in every REX. Finally, the more importantly, you have an instrument now which is about, I would say, operational now. It's fun. You didn't have it. So it was very difficult also to manage the interaction with REX and the regional mechanism without that strong instrument. Now, I said that I leave this for the moment, but I also, as an observer, would like to share what we also have observed that actually the chair of the council also mentioned it. The first one is really the competing interest of states within the council. It has, in some cases, it has complicated the decision-making process, but also the implementation of your own decision. And I also know that we have many institutions, including the Sanction Committee, the Committee on Post-Conflict Reconstruction. We, from where we are, some of them, they seem to be dormant. The third one, we also know that you are very much committed to interaction with the civil society organization. But one annual CSO forum, I don't think it is enough if you really want to make use of them. And of course, I think we should also agree that in member states, the 55 member states, we don't have always national infrastructures for peace, which actually should be the ones to generate ingredients to civil society organization, and not just come as ECOSOC or whatever to say we represent the local community interest. Now, I think I'm going to finish by making very few recommendations. In doing so is actually to say that things have changed, especially in the spirit of the AU institutional reform. I think, number one, we have come with a new protocol. That new protocol, which entered into force in November 2021, has actually, for us, elevated us very much. The relation between AU and the REC is no more at the level of the Secretariat. It is at the level of the decision-making bodies through the Mid-Year Coordination Summit, because we can now move up to the heads of state. Before that, we were not able to move to that. And I think, in my view, that power now that we have to participate in the agenda setting and in the deliberation, it's really new. It was not there with the MOU. The second one is something I personally believe should really be closed in terms of debate. That issue of subsidiarity, I want to make a proposal. The only thing which is missing, in my view, is the benchmarking. And nobody else can do it except the AU Peace and Security Council. My proposal is that you should consult more REX to begin with. You can then delegate or support their own initiatives, but you must monitor and evaluate their action and take over anytime, whenever you think they have failed to deliver. For me, it is simple, but only the Peace and Security Council can do it. Let me honestly take this opportunity to congratulate the Gambia. When you organize, I think it's a week ago, on 24 April, the inaugural joint consultation with ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council, our colleague from ECOWAS, he shared your statement, the statement you made. I read it. By the way, I shared it immediately with my Secretary General. Actually, we started celebrating ourselves. It was in the afternoon. There was no water even in the, but we celebrated. We were very happy. So for us, the Peace and Security Council of AU, you have done what we have been looking for. What we would like to suggest is that you replicate it at all REX. Of course, you are right to start by Abuja. That's where the African Economic Community was born. So I think it was legitimate. But we are anxious to see you moving to other REX. The third thing, something Parfait mentioned, I think there have been a lot of meetings on a nexus between peace and security, governance, development. Now, Parfait is bringing in regional integration as a very strong currency. I believe in it so much. I think there is one avenue, in my view, that can help the Peace and Security Council to handle this issue, is to join this exercise or even bless it. There's an exercise that AU COMESA is very strong in it, and PRM, which is to support the volunteer country structural vulnerability assessment. We have gone only for 9 countries. We should really push to have the 55 doing it. And the outcome of this volunteer structural vulnerability assessment, for me, can help you to overcome the famous linearism, slow expression of implementing your own decision, because the decision will be generated by the countries themselves. The fourth thing, to encourage the AU Peace and the Security Council to request REX to actually develop stronger engagement with the civil society, so that ECOSOC is not coming as something hanging in the air with no basis. And my final one, I had planned to say it in the presence of NEMA. From where we are in Building C, when you see the Peace and Security Council having meetings, many hours, communique coming out, we have a feeling that the Peace and Security Secretariat is not weak. It's very strong quality-wise, but the quantity criteria is challenging them. I thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for that very rich and comprehensive intervention. So as I mentioned earlier on, Solomon had to leave us because he had another urgent engagement. So apologies on his behalf. So yeah, Ambassador, I think you raised very interesting points. Perhaps what you mentioned about the elevation of AU-REX relations to the level of decision-making organs, I think that's a very critical point, in that it does present the kind of engagement we want to see between the two levels. Also, the need for benchmarking on the principle of subsidiarity. I think this is essentially one of the issues that has been challenging the decision making of the Peace and Security Council as well, on various issues that we have seen, especially with regards to the occurrence of coups in Western Africa. So I think that's also a very interesting point that you have flagged. So yeah, let me now open the stage for questions and answers to be directed to our panelists. We can perhaps take about 4 questions first and then come back for a second round. So please, the stage is open. As Solomon mentioned earlier on, we do also have amongst us Ambassador Churchill of Cameroon, also other PSC member, Egypt, Ambassador Gad. So your inputs, comments, or contributions also appreciated. And Ambassador of Kenya as well, amongst us, Ambassador of Botswana and South Africa.
Thank you very much. And let me right at the outset thank the Amani Africa for Media Research Group for organizing this very, very important forum, especially on the advent of the 20th anniversary of the EU Security Council. And to also thank our excellent panelists for the very, very elucid and educational information that they have imparted today. I was particularly impressed with the presentations that came from our backs. You are not outsiders anymore. You are, in fact, our bosses. Structurally, we're always speaking about a bottom-up approach. And without you and the member states that constitute, and we are also representatives of those very same member states. It's the same issue that perhaps we have always had as the AUPSC or subsidiary when it comes to the United Nations Security Council and our rights and roles under Article, is it an article? Chapter 8 of the UN Charter. Sometimes we feel that they are not pretty much respected. I think we still have such issues when it pertains to Resolution 2719 of the UN Security Council. But just to say that even though I'm a newly arrived envoy here in Addis Ababa, I have really been impressed both by the work of the Peace and Security Council, those that we found as Botswana being a new member this year, and who are outgone, and those that we found still serving on this on the Peace and Security Council. It's really commitment. It's not nice to be shocked, but I was pleasantly shocked to find that Africa is really set and committed to finding African solutions to African problems. What I have observed through the work and the commitment, especially when we're in Swakopmund, during the initiation of those of us who were new, was the commitment in Africa that I noticed that Africa is now really rooted in the paradigm of constitutionalism, respect for the rule of law, and human rights as very cardinal to our management of issues relating to peace and security and sustainability of such an agenda. So really, I don't think we really have to be beating ourselves too much over the head and thinking that we are not doing enough. We have enough experience, and we've realized that we really have got to commit to principle. The AU stance on unconstitutional changes of government is very clear on that, and how the Peace and Security Council has often reacted and taken decisions in pursuit of the Constitutive Act of the African Union. It really shows that 20 years down the line, as Africans through the AU Peace and Security Council, we recognize that we have to find solutions to our own challenges and work to do that. I think I was also blessed right after arrival. In March, we received, even though we are not yet members of the Peace and Security Council, the report of the panel of the wise, stating out as to how the Africa Peace and Security architecture could work better, especially in relation to how the AUPSC would work closely with the panel of the wise. The PSC didn't hesitate in considering that report, and I would say adopted these recommendations in total in the decisions that it took following the presentation of the report. So I think we are all that we have to work together. All the systems that we have under the African peace and security architecture needs to really be functional. I'll agree with Ambassador Matata that the REX also needs to be fully engaged. We agreed as the PSC in consultation with the ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council that this needs to be done. And I believe it is the intention of the PSC in consultation with the AU Commission to further do this. And we are pleased that the RECs that are here and all the RECs that are part and parcel of the African Peace and Security Council architecture are also willing and looking forward to such intensifies interaction with them. I don't think, as we say in Botswana, I should make biltong out of an elephant and its legs. But I think other colleagues will also add on to what we have said. The last point that I want to make is that everybody in the PSC and the other entities of the African Union agree that the continental early warning system has to be now fully implemented and utilized. We are all agreed, and this is one area where I'm pleasantly surprised, and I love it, in that we are saying, let us get out of the mode of denialism, because that is not going to help us. If we get out of the mode of denialism, it will help us fully utilize our preventive diplomacy ability and capability. This should apply both through early warning system in conflict management and post-conflict reconstruction, or really sustaining the peace that we might have built through the peace process. So the early warning system really has to work, and utilization of our mechanisms such as the panel of the wise. And of course, as Ambassador Matata has indicated, this also needs to be institutionalized at the national level, so that whether it's the RECs, through the mechanisms that they have. I know in SADC, we already have the panel of the elders, if I'm not mistaken, and the mediation reference group. So these have to be really consolidated and made to work. I thank you very much, Madam Facilitator.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for that intervention. I'm still opening the stage for any other comments or comments.
Thank you very much, Amani Africa, and I really want to appreciate as well the panelists. First and foremost, for me, over humanitarian organization, I really wanted to recognize and appreciate the members of the Peace and Security Council that are present here, but also those that have come before them in terms of membership within the council over the years, the manner in which they have given an opportunity to humanitarian organizations to highlight and to engage with them on matters related to the humanitarian situation in the continent. If you look at since the inception of the Peace and Security Council, the PSC has held well over 30 sessions dedicated specifically on the question of humanitarian issues. That tells you the commitment that the PSC has given to humanitarian issues, and also acting as a voice, apart from, of course, giving organizations also an opportunity to engage and to raise these issues. So that's the first point I wanted to raise, really to appreciate, and I want really to recognize ambassadors here who are present, also who continue to be champions on a number of these issues, and with whom we continue to work very closely with. Second point is, of course, on the issue of norms development, and I think a number of speakers have spoken about that. Through the collaboration with actors such as ourselves, the ICC, we have seen a very strong mainstreaming of international humanitarian law into the key decisions and policies of the AU and the Peace and Security Council and various organs. And I think this is critical because, of course, it relates to questions on how the AU holds, for example, the peace support operations when it comes to the question of compliance to international humanitarian law. I think the question of how the Peace and Security Council pronounces itself on matters related to the mandate and expectations of the PSOs, support protection of civilian population in their mandates. I think this is key, and we observe it very clearly. So I really want to commend the Peace and Security Council for making international humanitarian law a central tenet of its work insofar as responding to the conflict situations in the continent is concerned. The third point I wanted to raise is really on more on how it enhance its collaboration with some of the key agencies and organs, whether the African Commission on Human and People's Rights or the African Committee on Expert Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, because these are also agencies that deal with certain thematic issues, but where an opportunity in terms of engagement with some of these agencies would give an opportunity to bring some of these issues from the field in order that when the Peace and Security Council is making a decision, takes this into consideration. So overall, I really want to appreciate and look forward for the next anniversary with the strong collaboration with the Peace and Security Council. Much appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Bruce, for that. I just want to add to the point that you have made about PSC's engagement with other AU organs. I think this is something that the PSC has been trying to also enhance, especially in the course of the past couple of years. But it's not just also about starting these engagements, it's also about sustaining them, because I heard you mention meetings or, collaboration with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, for instance. This used to take place, I believe, around 2015, but we didn't see it maintained and carried on into other years. So it's also about really sustaining these engagements. So just to add on the points that Bruce made, but yeah, any other questions or comments, please? Okay, so if we do not have further reflections, I could just hand over to our panel members to make last remark, because I don't believe there was any specific question forwarded to.
Well, thank you very much for. Let me thank the panelists, because I'm not one of the panelists anyway. But let me thank you for your invaluable insights into the work that the PSC has been doing over the last 20 years. And I think we've had quite a lot from you, and I'm expecting that Amani Africa will synthesize some of these views expressed here into a comprehensive policy report that we can have the opportunity to look at as we, in fact, next month, I think the whole month is devoted to celebrating the 20th anniversary. There'll be a lot of weeks dedicated to the different aspects of the PSC's work. And I think we can take this discussion forward throughout the year and see how to strengthen the PSC's role in responding to the challenges of peace and security on the continent. He mentioned the issue of relations with the REX. I think as a delegation, this is something that we are particularly concerned about. And I think we want to see it replicated. The example that took place in Abuja, Nigeria, we want it replicated across the continent with other REX and RMs, so that at least no REX or RM is left out, in terms of improving this fruitful engagement that has begun to take shape, across our engagements with actors on matters of peace and security on the continent. So personally, I believe these reflections should continue throughout the year in celebrating this milestone in our engagement with peace and security issues on the continent. I thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And I cannot agree more with you. It's unfortunate that our dear sister Emilia has left, and we wish her well. But before leaving, really, she made extremely important points, including reassuring all of us that quiet diplomacy is at work. And I think this is extremely important, including, of course, all these informal consultations that the Peace and Security Council has now undertaken to develop with those countries that are under the sanction regime of the council. I think this is important because indeed we can consider democracy, as a work in progress on the continent, and therefore those countries that are currently excluded, suspended, will have to be helped through these difficult transitions. And this is where the work on the PCRD and in which Egypt, for example, is giving a lot of making a lot of effort. And the new outfit that the UN, UNDP, has now put in place, the AUPSC, that is this outfit that is meant to assist countries in difficult transition, and that is working closely with the Commission, mainly the peace, the PAPS, and the political and Peace and Security Commission. All of these are indications that more progress can be expected. And I cannot agree more with you, Ambassador Botswana. We have to make a better use of the existing early warning mechanisms that is in place, so that there is no room for denial, because we know that when things really unravel, they become a burden for not only neighboring countries, but for the entire global community, in a context where, unfortunately, there is, understandably so. And actually, I mean, I should rephrase this. Some would call it donors' fatigue in terms of humanitarian assistance. The problem here is actually the number and the scale of the humanitarian, and Bruce is here to confirm the issues that challenges that we are facing outpace the humanity. This is the reality. That's why we need to do even more of really moving forward with the prevention agenda to close that important gap. Now, we should also commend the council for now. Very soon, I understand, on 27th of May, you'll be putting in place your subcommittee on sanctions. And I think this inaugural meeting indicates clearly that the council is at work. And we will simply wish the same kind of commitment on also operationalizing the two other subcommittees, the one on PCRD, as I just mentioned, and the one on counterterrorism. So there is really room for improvement, including on the issue of benchmarking that Ambassador Matata so eloquently articulated. I think there is absolutely room for progress, and as far as the UN is concerned, we will be really happy and prepared to help address issues, including those relating to the subsidiarity. But first, to simply say that we are really privileged to be partnering with the Peace and Security Council. My office is on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, actually, coordinating, facilitating interactions between the chairperson of the Peace and Security Council and president of the UN Security Council. This is happening on a monthly basis, and ahead of their respective chairship, so that they can, as much as possible, coordinate, and anticipate on the agendas that would be on the respective bodies in order to collaborate as best as possible in a search for peace and stability in the continent. So for all of this, again, a pleasure to be here, and we look forward, of course, to greater partnership in future. Thank you, Amani.
Where I'm coming from, when the boss has spoken, you don't speak. If the member states have spoken, and I really appreciate the intervention of Ambassador of Botswana and the chair of the Peace and Security Council. If you want, I can use an economic expression. When the supply and the demand match, what else? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, each and every one of the member of the panel. Thanks, of course, in the name of Amani, for honoring us and joining us and making time to join this engagement today. I think we've reflected quite a bit on what the PSC has done, the kind of advancement it has had in the past 20 years of its operation. I think a major takeaway perhaps from all of these conversations could be that there is already a very rich normative framework, normative standards, mechanisms, tools that the PSC needs to now effectively engage in. And also perhaps having more collaboration between member states and also, of course, between the level of RAKES and Peace and Security Council to make sure that the decisions of the Peace and Security Council are effectively implemented on the ground, because I believe that is where we are currently facing some challenges, I would say. But having said as much, let me thank the PSC Secretariat and, of course, the Permanent Mission of Gambia for collaborating with us in organizing this event. The Norway mission to the AU for the support and collaborating with Amani for making this event happen. And of course, each and every one of you for joining us here today and those joining us online as well. Thank you so much and see you at another event.